It's time for Where You Live with Gene and Tony, the show that's all about owning, buying, selling, renting, and association management. If it involves a home, we'll talk about it. Here's your chance to get your homeowner questions answered. From the Concierge Landscape Studios, here's Gene and Tony.
Needed the shelter of someone's arms, and there you were. Needed someone to understand my ups and downs, and there you were.
Welcome to Hour 2 of Where You Live with Gene and Tony. I'm Gene Sullivan.
I'm Tony Crockett.
And today we're asking the question, what is reasonable? And what we were talking about at the end of the last hour here was what is reasonable to know in terms of the ins and outs of an HOA. What do you need to look at before you sign on the dotted line?
That's right. You need to make an informed decision when you're purchasing a home. And people tend to not pay that much attention when they buy a home in a homeowners association.
Yeah, it seems like it's been my experience that more people spend more time trying to research a TV or their cell phone than they do a home.
One of my favorite stories came from a manager in our office where he was patiently explaining to a new homeowner what the parking regulations were, why he got a note on his car saying he couldn't park there, what his monthly assessments were for. He didn't know he was supposed to pay monthly assessments. There was a long conversation about this, and at the end of the conversation, the owner said, okay, what is this homeowners association thing, and how do I get rid of it?
How do I get rid of it? Yes, exactly.
Well, it's harder to get rid of than you might think.
That's right. People have tried.
Yeah.
And then the other thing we want to talk about today, there is new legislation in Illinois, and we'd love to hear from you on this a little bit later on the show. We're going to be talking about a representative who said that proxies ought to be outlawed. Now, in a homeowner association, that proxy notice is very important because a lot of times without it, the association cannot hold their annual meeting. The proxy says I cannot go to vote at the meeting as a member, so I will give a proxy to someone to vote in my stead, to take my place, to represent me at that meeting.
And also, you can be counted towards the quorum, which is really important. Otherwise, a meeting can't be held if you don't have a quorum. And in this case, we need to remember that homeowners associations are corporations. So this is the board and the members that are voting, and proxies are a very common tool.
So to me, it's real interesting that here is a legislator who says that she would like to see that outlawed.
Because she thinks they're unfair.
So, yeah, we want to talk about that, too. The number, of course, we want you to give us a call, folks.
651-289-4488. Tell us what's on your mind.
Yes, and by the way, too, we did pull up something. It was an email from a listener, and my fingers hit the wrong button, and I ended up deleting it. So if you want to, I'm sorry about that, but if you'll send that email again, we'll read that on the air. That's Gene at ncmgi.com. Well, let's begin talking about, once again, what do you need to know before you purchase into a condo or townhome association? We talked about fees. Tony, what's another thing that someone should look at?
We had talked about the reserve study, and actually Joan kind of asked a question about that. Her association needed to replace carpet in the hallways, and apparently they did not have money in reserve that had been saved over the 20 years of the carpet to replace it, right?
No, what happens a lot of times.
So it's a real thing. It's a very real thing that occurs in homeowners associations, and when you're buying, you should make sure there's an adequate reserve fund.
So you need to take a look at the monies that are coming in, because that is an important aspect. Not only do they have a number budgeted for it, but are they actually setting it aside?
Are they actually saving what they should? Another important thing when it comes to dues and the budget is, what is the delinquency rate in that homeowners association? There's almost always going to be people that are late paying dues. There may be some that are actually not paying dues anymore and are heading for foreclosure, but you need to know if the association is financially sound. And an important piece is, what's the delinquency rate?
You know, that was the deal breaker for that one property I was analyzing for someone
in Florida.
In Florida, I was looking at their budget and taking a look at their income statement,
Uh-huh.
and they budget for about $600,000 a year to come into that association. The delinquencies were right around $300,000.
50%?
That's 50%. Yes.
Yay! You can't. That association can't operate.
It's very difficult, and this person, and boy, I really felt for him because I could just sense that it was, it was really important that he purchased there. Apparently, he'd been down there. He had seen everything. He loved the area. He said, "I'm looking forward to retiring."
And
so
I'll bet you it was a really good deal.
Oh yes, I'm
I
sure.
mean, I bet the purchase price was really bargain basement.
Purchase price was probably very, very good.
Yeah.
It was seemed like an idyllic situation. It was lovely. The palm trees. It had all the amenities wanted. And he thought, you know what? I can rent this out for a few years when I retire. This is going to be the retirement home.
Yeah.
I told him, I'm not saying you can't buy it.
That's right.
But
This is what we see.
if you're asking for my recommendation, if half the people aren't going to pay, then effectively the other half that have to double their fee if you expect to get things done and accomplished.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not. And what do you want to financially tie yourself to that kind of ship?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. What is a reasonable percentage for delinquencies?
I would say probably somewhere between 5 to 10%.
Okay.
Is reasonable.
That seems more like normal operating procedure. You're always going to have a handful of people maybe that are behind, and
it's like anything else when we talk about renting a property for a landlord too. 10% on a 100-unit building is a lot different than on a 1-unit building. I mean, you're either 100% full. On a 1-unit building, you're 100% full or 100% vacant.
That's right.
So,
that's absolutely right.
So, you need to take a look at what that is. So, yes, obviously, the larger the property, a 5 to 10% is not going to necessarily be, out of line.
It won't have such an impact.
No.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Another important thing to take a look at are the HOA rules.
Yeah, the rules and regulations. People are continually shocked to find out there's rules they have to obey once they've moved into their new home. And you need to know what those are up front.
Yeah, that was the whole issue behind that Senate file 926 weeks ago that we talked about here on the show.
That's right.
There was an individual who went to her legislator asking for new laws to be considered because it was her understanding, according to the person that sold her the home, that you don't have to worry about these
There's
rules.
an association, but you know what? It's not a big deal. You don't have to pay any attention to it. That was really bad advice.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate that if that was what was said by the realtor, that person was being very irresponsible.
That's right. You need to know, if you have 2 Great Danes, you better know if there's pet rules that restrict the size of pets in your homeowners association before you sign on the dotted line, correct?
Yeah.
Or if you have 4 vehicles, you better find out if there's parking for 4 vehicles.
You need to take a look at those. Remember the story, I think was it last week when we talked about, or 2 weeks ago, about the children that were not allowed to play at the HOA.
That's right.
And that was in the rules, or is going to take part as being a part of their rules, because in that particular case, there was
no green space, or
no
very
green
little.
space.
Yeah.
Kids were playing in the parking lot.
That's right.
And by the street, and the board was concerned about that. So you need to take a look at the rules. Are these things that you can live with?
That's right. That's right. Do you think they're reasonable?
Mm-hmm. Another aspect of this is to take a look at the business of the board of directors, because not only do you need to take a look at what the rules are, but what's coming down the pike. What are the big
Okay.
issues that other people are wanting to change that you may not be aware of now, but boy, you move in and 2 months later, all of a sudden you find out, oh, by the way, we're not going to allow pets anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Or here's a big one. You move in, you find out they're putting restrictions on rentals. And perhaps a year from now, you need to move again, or you get a new job. You may need to rent out your place or pay 2 mortgages. The rental thing hits close to home to me because restricting rentals really restricts the flexibility of your owners.
Oh,
so
yes.
you need to know what's the prevailing attitude about lots of different subjects.
You need to take a look at what we call the big picture, where are there deferred maintenance that you're seeing at the property?
Yeah.
What Joan said earlier today. Are you walking down a hallway and you're noticing that the carpeting is really pretty worn?
Yeah.
Do you see paint that's peeled quite a few places and just doesn't look like it's been painted in a long time? Do you see a fence that may be dilapidated and not be in the best of shape? Those are the things that are going to give you an idea that may be what the association's doing to kind of get along.
And that's a special assessment waiting to happen, isn't it?
Oh, yes, it is.
And a special assessment means there's no money in the reserve fund to take care of painting that fence or replacing that carpet. So we got to have it done. We're going to divide up the cost among all the homeowners, and you have to pay it now.
Yeah.
In addition to your dues.
Yeah. Well, these are just some of the things that we've thought of as sort of important items to take a look at before you purchase into that homeowner association. If you'd like to get a copy of some of this, you can please give us a call at New Concepts at 952-922-2500. And when you do that, make sure you also ask for our free subscription, our bi-monthly newsletter called What's New, where a lot of the great topics that we cover here on the radio station are covered in further detail. A super resource, again, yours, free for the asking. Give us a call, 952-922-2500. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about this Illinois legislator who would like to outlaw proxies in HOAs.